session or this live stream about effective sustainable policies for career development in research. I'm happy to welcome you from my office from Hanover, Germany. And it's said that we can't organize a live session, but unfortunately this is how we do business these days. My name is Gábor Kismiho. I'm the head of Learning and Skill Analytics Research Group at TIB. TIB stands for the Leibniz Information Center for Science and Technology. We are located here in Hanover, Germany. I'm also the head of the Career Development Task Force and the Research Funding Working Group at the Marie Curie Alumni Association. And I'm going to be hosting and moderating this session. And I also want to express warm welcome to our panelists. First is Eva Vnatkova, who is an open science coordinator at the National Library of Technology and also at the University of Chemistry and Technology in Prague, the Czech Republic. And she's a former president of Eurodoc and a current member of the Eurodoc Advisory Board. I also want to welcome Aurea Chopignon, who is project manager of doctoral training and career development at the MSc co-found doctoral program at the University of Côte d'Azur. I hope I pronounced this well. And also, she was a former president of Eurodoc and an open science ambassador of Eurodoc. And last but not least, I want to welcome Frank Cardels, who is representing industry, who's a big data and analytics expert at the World Economic Forum, and he was the former head of the Career Development Working Group at the Marie Curie Alumni Association. As you probably realized, this is a live stream with unfortunately limited capacities to interact. And this is something what we want to overcome somehow. So if you watch this stream live, please don't hesitate to ask your questions, submit your suggestions. The reason for this is that originally we were planning for a very interactive workshop. The original plan was that it's not going to be us, the panel and myself talking to you, but actually the other way around. We wanted to, and we still want to collect information, your views. How do you think about sustainable research careers, especially from a policy perspective, both on national or institutional level? So please, and I will draw your attention to this on a regular basis, use your chat and use your means to submit questions, suggestions for us. Those are highly appreciated, and hopefully they will constitute an integral part of this live stream. So what we're going to do is first, I'm going to introduce the topic, sustainable researcher career, through a recent declaration, what two important bodies representing early career researchers, namely MCAA and Eurodoc, published last year. And then we will have 4 rounds of discussions around the 4 pillars of this declaration. All right, so again, if you watch this stream online, don't hesitate to ask your questions or submit your views. So before we start, just really a few words about our association, the Marie Curie Alumni Association. The association basically consists of current and previous beneficiaries who got Marie Skłodowska-Curie Action Grant from the European Union, European Commission. Altogether, so far, around 125,000 researchers benefited from this grant from the European Commission. And out of this 125,000, 16,500 researchers are actual members of MCAA. We are a global organization. We have 33 chapters all over the world, and we have 6 working groups. We work on a voluntary basis, and basically, first and foremost, we are trying to influence policy making which impacts research and researchers' life. That's the reason why we are here and we are participating and contributing to this session. If you want to have more information on the association, you see the link in the bottom. Don't hesitate to put it in your browser and learn more. So now we arrive to the meat of our stream, which is the Declaration of Sustainable Researcher Careers. This is something what we published last year, as I said, together with Eurodoc, after a long consultation with our members. So it all started back in February 2019. MCAA has an annual conference, and I was managing one of the sessions, the session on career path of researchers. And for a great surprise, this was one of the most attended sessions of, if not the most attended sessions of MCAA conferences. More than 400 researchers came to this session. We had very lively discussion around key issues and factors which influence researcher careers. And after the session, we thought that these voices, these concerns shouldn't be unheard. So we decided to put this down on paper, which after consulting with Eurodoc and Eurodoc membership resulted in the Declaration on Sustainable Researcher Careers, which was published on the 27th May 2019. We have a link here, but you can also scan the QR code that will bring you directly to the document. Feel free to read it, comment it, and then get back to us, with your comments. So what did we say in this declaration? We compiled 4 important points of what policymakers, both on institutional and national level, should consider. And these 4 points, these 4 pillars are, I believe all of them are very critical when it comes to sustainability of careers. Point number 1, what we were claiming and what we suggesting for policymakers and institutions, that institutions should provide sustainable career prospects for researchers. What was the problem here? First of all, the short-term doctoral and postdoctoral research funding. We are talking about 2, 3, maximum 4 years long contract. Research is not a race. Research is a marathon. So we have to keep this in mind when we are financing research careers. Also, it's very important to point out that the long-term career options in academia, those are very limited. Right now, the numbers say that around 70% of early career researchers and postdocs have to leave academia. There is no room, no funding, no positions available there. So if you think about it, 70%, this number, academic careers are the alternative careers of those people who enter doctoral training. This is a very critical observation, what we believe need to be reflected in any doctoral training. And also due to the short-term funding of doctoral research and postdoctoral work, the decision to leave academia is often postponed to the very last minute. So there is no strategic thinking, basically, or strategic planning behind careers. Always the focus is on the contractual period, and then people, researchers have to rush or have to be in a stress to find a solution for their next career steps. It's really far away from ideal. So what did we recommend? We recommend long-term, predictable, and sustainable funding. We recommend that we should involve early in the when an early career researcher is thinking about potential career, his or her potential career, non-academic employers. So these should be maybe represented in doctoral training or in the research program. So the fellows have an idea how the world outside of academia looks like, and what do they need in order to get there. And first, and not at least, we need data. So something what is currently still missing all over Europe is the implementation of proper career progress tracking systems. This is something what we need in order to come up with real evidence-based policies. So point number 2, what this declaration said was about deploying career management services at organizations employing researchers. What was the problem? What we identified? First, we saw that in most of the institutions, there was very little guidance on especially alternative career opportunities. So what a researcher can do with his or her skill set outside of academia in the future. Some universities, some institutions, mostly in Western and Northern Europe, they're already doing this, but Eastern Europe, Central Europe, Southern Europe, there's still a lot of room to improve this situation. Also, we identified that institutions and research supervisors need to be very transparent about potential employment opportunities. Again, there is missing information in this loop. Institutions and research supervisors oftentimes have very little idea what might be available as a job, as a career for their current PhD students, doctoral researchers and postdocs. And this comes with stress. So we observe, and I guess a number of different sessions also through ESOF discuss this, that stress is a big issue. Mental health problems in academia are really skyrocketing, and the available organizational support for this is still far away from sufficient. So what do we recommend? We recommend to deploy services for career management to support individual career pathways. We recommend that this career guidance should be incorporated in the doctoral program, in the doctoral training program, if it's available at the institution. And last but not least, also researchers need to be trained to reflect on all the skills, what they gather and what they learn and master throughout their doctoral program. It's not happening. So usually doctoral programs are focusing on the research output, but we shouldn't forget that a skilled person is also an output of a doctoral program, and that person should be aware of his or her skills at the end of the project. Point number 3 is putting more emphasis on transferable skills training and recognition. Again, this is a claim of what our communities have been saying or disseminating to the larger audience for many years, because there is definitely mismatch between academic and non-academic skill sets. So if someone wants to leave the academic environment, probably that person needs different type of skills, what the academic environment requires. Then transferable skills are critical to strengthen personal integrity and employability for a long term. This is not a focus right now of doctoral training and training programs of doctoral schools. And last but not least, researchers should be able to communicate with the world outside of research. So they need to speak the non-academic language, which again, something what can be taught, something what we can work on together. So what do we recommend? We definitely recommend to enrich researcher training with transferable skills training. So more horizontal type of training courses should be integrated in the training program of each doctoral candidate. Excellence in transferable skills and community engagement should be part of researchers' regular performance evaluation. So right now, Usually doctoral researchers are evaluated on the basis of their research output, or in case they have to their training output. But we believe that this is not sufficient. So we should come up with measures, with performance evaluation criteria, which are related to transferable skills and community engagement. And last but not least, not only come up with criteria for performance evaluation, but also try to dedicate deliverables in doctoral research projects which are related to these skills, where postdocs and doctoral researchers need to show that these skills are present. Point number 4, and this is the last point in this declaration, is that we believe we need to provide a wide variety of networking options and services in and outside of academia. So what is the problem here? Academic work these days are getting more and more specialized. That means oftentimes researchers, early career researchers, work in both mental and physical isolation. And this makes it very difficult to reach out from your very small circles. So institutions, supervisors, also the fellows themselves, they need to work together to overcome this barrier. Also, right now, there are very little efforts which help building networks outside of academia. And very often, it all depends on the individual proactivity of researchers. So if a researcher, an early career researcher, doesn't stand up and push networking forward, usually nothing happens. And last but not least, we need to focus on non-European researchers working in Europe. They are in a particularly difficult situation because it's one thing that they don't have their professional networks when they come and arrive to Europe to do research work here, but they also leave their other social networks behind. And if we want to capitalize on their wisdom and on their work, we need to provide not only professional but social networks within this country. So what do we recommend? We recommend to support researchers' inter and intrasectoral mobility. So we should really push researchers to be mobile. We need systematic organizational support behind networking. So institutions or funders should help researchers to make this happen. There are some very good examples how to do this. And last but not least, we should look at cultural differences and try to support and bridge these cultural differences, especially when we talk about people arriving from different cultures, non-European cultures. So these were the 4 points of the Declaration of Sustainable Research Careers. And now I want to spend a few time on the next steps. So where do we want to go? What is our plan? Obviously, we represent here early career researchers and postdocs. So our initiative is a true bottom-up initiative. And we believe that innovation happens or can happen bottom-up. So what do? We already see that our steps, this declaration, influenced other policy recommendations, other important policy work. Recently, there was a paper published which is called Towards Responsible Research Career Assessment. Obviously, sustainable careers and research assessment, you can't disconnect these two issues. Also, what we observed that certain areas of research started picking up this topic and publish their own manifesto. In this case, it's the community of work and organizational psychologists. And of course, we are continuing the work to co-develop this agenda, this sustainability agenda. We are consulting our memberships on a regular basis through our general assemblies and meetings. We have regular consultations with important stakeholders. This should have been an important point when we collect information from you and from the audience, but we are in close connection with the European University Alliance and other similar organizations. And last but not least, at the end, we want to update the declaration. So we want to continuously update this agenda and give you an idea, give the community an idea what's the situation about sustainability and what are the key issues. All right. Besides influencing policy, we also want to contribute to the training development. So we also not only talk about the need of change, but we also want to drive the change. So recently, we started collaborating with a non-profit organization, which targets sustainable employment of researchers. So how to develop resilience and related skill sets, how to think about boundaryless careers, how to improve researchers' well-being and emotional skills. So we started building up together a training program, a non-profit training program, which comes from researchers, which aim to researchers. And we try to offer this through this non-profit organization. We also managed to acquire funding to build courses, to build training content in the areas. One important project what we run is called the O. Edwards project. You see the partners, it's run by University Siegen, they are the coordinators, but all the important members of the community are there. So the Alumni Association, Euro, Signing, my organization, and we also have content providers, Trinity College Dublin and Space. And there we are developing learning content for open science, for communication skills and mental health related and well-being related skills. At the end, we will develop the training program, we will deliver a number of summer schools, and we also want to come up with measures how to measure the effectiveness of this training. We also acquired another project very recently. It's basically the same crowd with different, with different content providers, where we look at the issue of mentoring and coaching, individual help of researchers. How can we provide individual help for researchers in different contexts? So in this project, in the Oscar project, what we will start at any moment, we don't have a website yet, but it's still to come. We want to provide personalized training on researcher mental health and career development by using artificial intelligence-based learning recommendations and online mentoring. So it's a very personalized approach where we want to address each and every researcher in our club, if you like. So there we are developing an artificial intelligence-based training recommender. We are developing an online mentoring platform. And again, we put effort on measuring the effectiveness of these efforts. And this all will be available for our communities, hopefully in the not very far future. We are also active in community building around this area. So very recently, again, we luckily acquired funding from the cost action framework for developing or setting up something called the Researcher Mental Health Observatory. Again, this project will start very soon. And the aim is to develop a conceptual framework and tools that are tailored to the academic concept when it comes to mental health. We want to take a multi-level perspective on problems and problem-generating mechanisms also on positive organizational behavior to support meaningful work in academia and well-being in academia. And last but not at least, we want to come up with a diverse range of methods to intervene and to cut down the lengthy feedback loops between research and practice. So the body of research, the body of evidence is building up, but we have to make sure this body of evidence reaches practice. And this is what this project is going to do. We start end of September, and it's a 4 years long cost action. It's an open action, so if you think you can contribute, you are more than welcome to join us. All right, so these were the key messages, what we developed over the past one and a half years. And now it's time for a panel discussion. It's time to address our panel and have a discussion go through these 4 points, what we discussed already in the declaration. So first, we are going to discuss the funding issue. And when it comes to the funding issue, one outstanding question, and this is what I would like to address first, is who's responsible for this funding? Who is responsible for funding all these issues around career management? And what is the output? Who's responsible for the output of doctoral research or a postdoc program? So maybe if Eva, you can start and give your views on this issue, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabros, for the question. So, as you said, the problem is the short term for the doctoral and postdoctoral researchers, which is about the funding. I think the issue is especially in postdoctoral level, because doctoral candidates usually have 3 to 4 years contract, but also in case of, for example, Marie Curie doctoral candidates in the Marie Curie fellows in ITN projects, they have just 3 years, and we have been advocating for a long time that this period should be 4 years. And I think this is happening that there are many researchers in Europe, and the funding research funding is limiting. And to give possibility to the researcher to have the work, there are many options for the project-based funding. And who is responsible, who is providing this funding? Because what could help, at least for the institution, having more structure funding and let's say institutional money, which could provide the longer term career options. So who is responsible here for the funding? I think it's the government or who's funded this. And then usually university, they are trying to catch this money, or research institutions. So for me would be this policy, how it can be improved by providing more structure funding and more institutional money instead of project-based.
Thank you, Eva. Now over to Aurea. What are your thoughts on this responsibility issues as representing an institution?
Thank you, Gabor. I think when we are getting local, national, and European funds, it is always with a specific timeline, and most of the time it works for the research project itself. But it is true that it puts the researchers in very unstable situation. Like research teams are also affected because they are training doctoral candidates or postdoc during 2-3 years. And once they develop all the required knowledge and competencies, they have to leave. And this is very problematic. And sometimes it is stressful, like you talk about mental health issue, because with these short-term contracts, especially when you want to have children or you already have children, it can be very problematic. So you have family allowances, which are helpful, but it is not giving you more stability. So what could be responsible to give more stability on this research contract? I agree with Eva that the government is a key stakeholder here to provide a better condition for the researchers. And also in institutions, they could improve their policy to encourage the more stability. So you talk also about, for example, specific services for career management. And here I think the institution could have a role to provide to the researchers some services in career management.
Thanks, Aurea. I also want to motivate the audience, the people who are watching the live stream now, to contribute your questions to this topic. And as long as you are hopefully contributing, I also want to mention one thing, or want to ask one more thing. Do you think like extending research contracts, currently a usual PhD contract by default, 3 years? I see now examples that actually this is some organizations extend it to 4 to 5 years of time. Do you think it's a proper way to go forward? Eva?
If I can answer, I think it should be the funding between 3 to 4 years, but 4 years would be most appropriate because especially in the, for example, European doctoral training programs, 3 years is not enough because people are in other countries, they have many other requirements regarding the mobility and meeting, training, and 3 years is enough, and there is very short rate of those who are finishing in the time. So this could be helpful, and here is the European Commission who is the founder. And usually then depends also for doctoral candidates, it's important what is this funding, because many doctoral candidates, but sometimes also for postdoctoral researcher, they have the stipends funding. And then there is the issue for, let's say, social security, maybe pension, and all those things. So proper employment contract should be provided to Icarus researcher, including doctoral candidates. And 4 years for doctoral candidates should be enough. I can just say that in Finland this is problem, like a very visible problem, that they have very short, let's say, funding also for doctoral training, which can be 1-2 years. So people are under high stress because they don't finish their, let's say, to work on the research, and they just need to find other funding. So it's very stressful, for example. So at least for doctoral level to provide 3 to 4 years funding.
Thank you, Eva. And now, Aurea, do you have any views on that? And please wait a little bit before you start talking.
Okay, yes, I agree with Eva about what she said. In my institution, for example, we are trying to develop our doctoral training, and it takes time for doctoral candidates. So they have less time to spend to their research, and that's why we would like to extend their doctoral program, because in this way you will have time to do outreach activities and develop more transferable skills, also make some mobility in another laboratory abroad. So it gives more opportunities for the doctoral training of researchers.
Thank you. I'm happy to see that Fran is back. So Fran, we were discussing issues around funding. What is your 2 cents on this issue? And again, please wait a bit before you start talking.
Well, so sorry everyone, because there seems to be some connectivity issues on my end. So that's the reason I was dropping. And thanks for the question. So basically, with an outside perspective. So kind of I would like to step back a bit from the comments. Is the first thing is what's being funded and what is not being funded. Because when we are thinking about what as a researcher you get for funding. We, as a researcher, I might be thinking, what is about my salaries, about the project, etc. But there is some long-term things that I don't know whether everyone realizes that they are coming behind. So I think Aurea and Eva mentioned this mobility, this additional training, etc. But I think there is an important point, and this point is that if you are not going to be continuing on an academic career, you are worse off than other people in the market who have been investing on professional programs. And that's going to be a bit my thesis for the rest is professional programs, they are delivered by universities, and those are kind of the most premium programs and the most expensive programs that universities deliver. So think about MBAs, professional masters, etc. So all these different programs are very, very expensive. So if somebody is expected to, after a career in research, to kind of retrain in industry, to going through some of these programs or a part of these programs, this is something that will come out of their pocket, at least how things are built today. So when we think about the funding, we of course need to think about the stability today to those who will continue in academia or those who are doing a program so that they don't get stopped midway. But we need to think as well about the resources that that individual needs to be supported with in order to be successful later on in careers. I think this is an important point to consider in terms of what funding is covering today and what it is not covering today.
Thank you, Fran. Thank you, Fran. I agree with you. This needs to be taken from a very strategic point of view. And also, it comes with the question, what is the output? What do we finance? It's a very good question. Do we finance projects or do we invest into the person? And the truth is obviously somewhere in between, right? Good. With this, I think we can move on to our next topic. And oops, there we are. And there, before we enter, I again want to express a call to the audience. Please, if you anytime you have a question, make sure you have that you submit your question through the chat. So far, unfortunately, we haven't received any questions for this topic, but anytime you want to come back to us about questions around funding, please let us know. And later at the end of the session, there will be time for a general Q&A where we can cover those issues. So point number 2, deploying career management services at organizations. So again, my question is responsibility. Is this solely the responsibility of institutions? What are the roles, what, for instance, supervisors may play in this area? What are the roles, what research fellows can play in this area? I'm truly interested in this view. What do you think, how this responsibility looks like? So maybe start again with Eva.
Yeah, I think the responsibility is on everyone, including, again, let's say government, institutions, and also researchers, because everyone has different, let's say, rules. From point of view, what we expect, like from institution, we will be having these management services. For what happened for doctoral candidates, that in some countries they have the student statute of the students, and these career services are at the same place for the students and not separate, but maybe they don't use it because it's mostly for the students, and researchers have different maybe needs in a research position for the funding outside. So this is also what should be taken in account. What we are expecting from the supervisor, also having the guidelines, like David guidelines, and as you mentioned, that they should be transparent. But my question is that are they aware about the situation? And I don't think that all of them are aware about the current situation, that there are too many, let's say, researchers. They have then issue with finding the job or mental health issue. And what is missing, I think here was mentioned in the previous point, is the importance of career tracking of EURECA's researcher, that there are some statistics. And this could be done at national level, for example, to collect this information and make it transparent. And then also institution can provide these opportunities. And at the same time, also researchers have their responsibility to be seek of this information, what is on the market.
Great, thanks. Aurea, what are your thoughts?
What I could, sorry. Okay, so what I could add here is that we should certainly collect more data, find a way to collect more data to have a better idea of career and labor market opportunities for researchers. What we know is that there are more and more people getting a PhD, and which I think is a good thing. But the problem is that there is no more permanent position in academia. So they need to find other solution. And the institution should aware early researchers about the opportunities outside of academia. It could be included in the doctoral training, also through mentorship program. And to be more informed, I would say that early researchers should have the opportunity to get closer from industry, be initiated to entrepreneurship. And the things would be easier if the university or the institution is part of an innovation ecosystem. Like it will be easier to get information about the needs of industry, policymakers, NGOs, and therefore it will create opportunities for researchers. So the responsibility here, as Eva said, is for everybody. The institutions need to make their part, and also the researchers. For the early researchers, the supervisors are also key person, and maybe they will need some training because they are not aware of all this changing. So yeah, I think that training the supervisor could be also a good solution.
Thank you, Aurea. And I'm happy to see that comments are coming in. Great. And before I turn to Fran, who's representing industry here, there is a comment on industry. I will read this. Hold on for a moment. So the comment says, you have spoken about needing a bigger involvement from non-academic employers in the training process. Is there a place for integrating a combination of industry-funded training programs followed by guaranteed transition, and long-term contract with the industry partner? So an industry partner might be funding a candidate in a field related to their business interest and be involved in some enrichment training of that candidate during the PhD postdoc process. And then that candidate transitions into a permanent position with that employer as they exit the academic program. The subject areas that are less of interest by industry can be prioritized by the government funding programs, and that restricted funding can be used to extend the contract length for researchers in those other programs. In my mind, this is a very interesting comment, and this is sort of, it mixes point number one and point number two, because, you know, career support, if we want to involve industry, that should come with incentives from both sides, right? Fran, how do you see this?
Yeah, so thanks for the question. So let me maybe give as well some background here. So this is very country specific based on my experience. So for example, in the UK, in Germany, and somehow in France, there are programs where people are employed by industry, and then from industry, they are placed on an academic program. So the same way that some employees do a part-time professional master while they are working, it works the same way. So in reality, they are industry employees who get placed into an academic environment or a research lab. So there are official and certified programs for doing that. So there is the, if I kind of remember correctly, there is the PhD by publication in the UK. That's a complete, let's say, country-specific program. There is limited equivalence in other countries. Germany has a similar system where from a certain point you can be an employee, and based on what you deliver in agreement with your PhD supervisor and maybe Gabriel can correct me here, but you present a dissertation and then you are you become a PhD. So there is that flexibility of being employed, being in the industry, and then your industrial partner or your employer is the one, let's say, funding you and allowing you to use some of your time to fulfill the prerequisites of your PhD thesis. So that's common across certain countries. It's not worldwide or it's not EU-wide, and maybe that's where we can, let's say, ask governments to help harmonize the PhD programs. Because interestingly, and this is a side note, there is no direct equivalence between PhD programs across EU countries. There is some specific agreements of recognition between countries, but if you move to another country and you want to be employed, you need to go to the national diploma recognition institution, whatever it is. For example, in the UK is the NARIC, where you present your PhD and then it will get, let's say, recognized as an equivalent of the country. So interestingly, there is not one size fits all, and it depends on the countries. And going back to the answer is what happens on the other world. Maybe I'm not employed by a company, and maybe I'm working on an academic lab, and I get some funding from the company. Would the company or the industry would have responsibility of hiring me, and how they can ensure that this gets breached? Well, probably that goes back to my previous comment. So if the industry and the lab have interest in developing potential employees and high quality researchers for that specific industry, I agree that there should be somehow coordinated action. I don't know whether it's at company level or it needs to be at industry level. So, for example, chambers of commerce, they play really a strong role, for example, in France. So the Chamber of Commerce of Paris, they own some business schools, some universities, what we call the Grand Écoles, and what they do is that through industry partnerships, they get funding for PhD programs, they fund chairs as well, so they fund as well the let's say the professor or the department or whatever name it is, and then that kind of PhDs tend to have some exposure to the company, to the culture, so that makes them more employable. So again, we see models, and they are not widespread, where this other framework works as well. The only thing is at the moment is very ad hoc and based on individual partnerships that those institutions, academic institutions, have with industry. But yeah, that's right. The two ways could work, and there are really good examples in Europe, and probably they could be extended. And I think that the key is about how we can scale the success of those programs, and we can make things more transparent.
Thanks, Fran. And exactly, this is a very interesting question. However, there are a number of issues here, what I see from, also from my own practice. One is the role of supervisors. So it's one thing that the institution has an agreement with an industry partner, but we shouldn't forget that, especially when it comes to like a PhD project or a doctoral research project, the supervisor is driving the whole story, almost, of course, together with the fellow. And we have to motivate the supervisor to be interested to develop the fellow in such a way that there's a smooth transition between these two worlds. And there I can easily see a conflict of interest, because a tenured, established supervisor will be interested in publications, will be interesting to push the barriers of science, if you like. And the industry needs might be different. And that comes with, of course, another issue that I'm not sure you can give a very general answer to this question, because every PhD project or every doctoral research is a bit different. So what may work in an engineering group at one person may not work with another person. And I'm not talking about now social scientists and research around social science, where this industry-academia partnership is not as obvious as with life sciences or engineering sciences. So I'm very happy to see that questions are coming in. So maybe I have to get rid of my questions in general, which is great. But let's move on to point number 3, because we received a lot of questions on transferable skills training. So for the audience, please send in your questions. Very nice to see this engagement. It really, I think it keeps us motivated to contribute with our best. And probably we won't be able to answer all questions, but don't forget that at the end, we want to publish the next version of the Sustainable Researcher Career Declaration. And these questions, these issues, what you mentioned, will play a role there. We will definitely consider those. So here, a question on transferable skills training from the audience, from Matthew. How does the research culture challenge the antiquated view that doctoral training is solely intended for an academic career? Which individuals, authorities need to be engaged? How can academics improve their transcultural skills? That's again another angle. So yeah, let's start with Eva.
Yeah, I will come back with the point that you mentioned at the beginning, and this is also what is the output, let's say, of the doctoral training. So it's not only the creation of the knowledge, but also the highly skilled people, which can be then employable in various settings. So what is happening is that again, probably institutions are not aware, or institutions are not incentivized to provide also other training, let's say, or put more emphasis on the transferable skills training, which is very important for researchers. And also from the point, like it changed the situation, like it was 20 years ago. Maybe the skills what's enough, but nowadays everyone should be continuing profession. There should be the continuous professionals development, and especially in doctoral training programs, the transferable skills or developing of the transferable skills is very important, also for the final part, and then to find the job. What I see that also institutions maybe not so incentivized. This could be done, or it's not, for example, a requirement of the quality assurance for doctoral training programs, what I see as an issue. And then it's about this recognition. So when there is, for example, mid-term evaluation of researchers, everyone is interested about the outputs, research outputs as the publication, but not the progress in the for example, the skills of the researchers. And this is something that should change this culture, put more emphasis about the development, professional, personal development of Irikaris researcher, because it is not only the knowledge, but those people then will work in the companies and can bring the innovation and everything, and they need the innovative skills which are required for today's society.
Thank you, Eva. Aurea, do you have something to add to this?
Yep. Here I could share maybe my own experience as project manager, because what we are trying to develop in my institution is a specific create your future pathway. Like the doctoral candidates, as Eva said, need to be more to receive more focus on their own trainings, transferable skills training, and the institution is more focusing, even the laboratory and the supervisors are really focusing on the output, like publications or technologies, new technologies. But we need to focus more on the doctoral candidates also. And with this Create Your Future pathway that we are developing in my institution through this European project is to provide 2 supervisors to the doctoral candidates from 2 different fields to ensure interdisciplinarity. And also they will have 1 tutor from academia and 1 mentor from industry. So they will have the both view outside and inside academia. Plus this 6 months mobility I was talking a bit earlier in a laboratory abroad to ensure international experience. So, and about the transferable skills training, what we are seeing is we don't have the teachers in our institution to develop these transferable skills for the early career researchers. So we need to organize bootcamp, for example, 3-4 days training with local or external experts from all the fields, like all the fields, and also with intersectoriality. Invite people from industry, from startup, from NGOs. So we need to be more open to the community. And here again is about innovation ecosystems. Another example is for another European project called PhD Hub. What we are doing is organizing hackathon. We are making teams with 3-4 doctoral candidates, and they are working for 24-48 hours in a project to create a startup. And they also have some coach to give them advices about business plan, project management, budget. And these are kind of good practices that should be developed, I think, in institutions.
Yeah, thank you, Aurea. It's very interesting to hear. And maybe one comment before I give the floor to Fran, that usually these discussions happen in relation to academia-industry cooperation. However, again, my experience as a PI, that those doctoral researchers who have these transferable skills more developed, they also perform better in research. So maybe, if I want to put it bluntly, the difference between very good and excellent research, those are the transferable skills. How you talk to your peers, how to, you have attention to the details, and also you are capable to manage your research team. So these are the things what really stand out, and those are also important in academia, but we do not recognize them. Oftentimes the recognition of this type of skills is missing. So, and now maybe, I turn to Fran after this small intermezzo.
So I think we have covered ourselves families of skills, because we shouldn't forget there is a mixture of soft skills, which is probably what you, Gabor, were mentioning, is things like communication, ability to work well with others. And I think those, just for reference to everyone, the World Economic Forum publishes every year a list of the top 10 most demanding soft skills. And I think the list is changing, but more or less those are needed in any environment. So absolutely, the more you master them. The problem is that those skills are hardly measurable. It's not like other sort of hard skill measurement. So the problem is the perception. So industry perceives that people who have done specific experiences have developed them. So I think here is a bit of a mixture of branding, as well as Korea was suggesting, giving exposure to this type of more business type, industry type experiences, which could be very close to academia, such as let's say startups or type of proof of concept type of companies which exist. Industry doesn't mean that everything is thinking in the short term. So those experiences exist, and they're a good way of proving. Because at the end of the day, soft skills, you prove them through your reputation. So that's when I'm mentioning the branding. So if you have good references, maybe from your industry partner, you have good references from colleagues, you are well known in your field because you are presenting and you have, I don't know, hundreds of presentations with good feedback. So all these different things give you that kind of reputation that helps you prove those soft skills. So that's one side of the coin. But the other side of the coin, which is where I'm kind of trying to influence what we can do as a community, is about the hard skills. And I'm taking again the hat of industry. So when we are recruiting, when we are bringing or trying to bring high quality, highly talented researchers, sometimes what we see, and it is nobody's fault, but industries have a specific standards and they have a specific tools that they do. So coming more and data environments. So for example, language might resonate with some of you, like Python. That's an industry standard. Then people maybe having doing the research on another language. So that creates gaps and that creates for people to move around. So having some type of industry type of certification. So you might be aware of many different software vendors that provide their own certifications. So kind of linking that to some of the activities, hardcore, hard skills activities that we do in research would be helpful to make those skills even more transferable. It's kind of I received this badge or I received this certification, I'm working with this tool that many hours. That helps you close the bridge. So sometimes, unless it's a specific field that requires a specific open source tool or homegrown developed tool, giving the researchers the ability to take time, complete those, that would be very, very useful to prove the transferability.
Thanks, Fran. Eva, you want to add to this?
Yeah, I think this collaboration with the industry is very important, but I think there are some obstacles as well for collaboration because, for example, if I am a researcher and I'm collaborating with the industry, maybe we are collaborating on something and they don't want to put out all the results, let's say, out. And for me as a researcher, for now, like what should change is the rewarding system, because what counts is the, let's say, publication output. And maybe this will be more important than the real collaboration with the industry, bringing something back forward, having the experience, engaging the skills. But maybe I will work with the industry for 1 year, 2 years, but at the end maybe it will be disadvantageous for me as a researcher if I would like to stay in the academic field, because again we are mostly evaluated based on the inputs like this publishing input. And what will also be helpful, it's to coming up enter the expert from the industrial field to the academia, which is also very difficult because there are professors again based on the publication and maybe not so much the expertise from the industry. And this we can see, for example, with the women in the science, because when we are at the doctoral level, there is almost 50% women and men. And then as we are going longer, it's the career as a professor. It's I think for women, it's just 10% of women are in the position of professor. And this is same is for the people once they leave, for example, academia, have experience in the industry. It can be very hard to go back to the academia. And I think this should change, because this can again change the culture and brings what the industry and what the real world really needs.
So I think this research culture issue is definitely something what needs to be discussed further. Also, it goes beyond the limitation of our discussion, because here I will read a comment we received which sort of reacts on this. And so the question is a comment. It says, supervisors, research group leaders hesitate to take on young researchers long term, because they want to be sure the employee will have high productivity, resilience to stress, and ability to get funding. These are all sort of transferable skills, right? Those who do not cope well with the current system will fall behind in hard competition. Soft skills or transferable skills are not always considered. So this is interesting, because on one hand, the comment says that when a supervisor decides to work long-term with someone, these transferable skills are super important, like capable for high productivity, resilience to stress, and ability to get funding. So these are not core research-specific hard skills. But on the other hand, when you select someone officially from an administrative point of view, these skills are usually not part of the evaluation criteria. And one more thought to this from my side. If I think of transferable skills training, and we go back to the responsibility question, I'm not sure we should hold the academic world or doctorate training solely responsible for this issue. Because if you think of most of the transferable skills training, they should be developed from childhood in a way. So how to be attentive, ethical, how to cooperate in teams, cultural sensitiveness, so empathy, and being able to work with people coming from different type of backgrounds. If we have to start teaching that at the level of doctoral training, I believe it's problematic. Maybe if you have a short reflection on these issues before we move to point number 4, that would be fantastic. So yeah, Eva first, please. Short.
Yeah, I think you are completely right, and this we cannot start with transferable skills at the doctoral level. For sure, this is especially nowadays when everything is so flexible. And as I said, or what I heard or in these days from one expert, that let's say 50 years ago, if you have done university, your skills that you learn or the knowledge, it was enough for all your career. There was no need to have additional skills and everything. But nowadays, everything is changing so rapidly. So we need the continuous career or personal skills development. So this is very, very important.
Aurea.
Yep, it's something I didn't think about it until you said it, but it's very interesting, and I totally agree with that. It should be something that we learn before doctoral program. And yeah, but for this, it's you mean it should start with education? Are you thinking about schools, or are you thinking about starting in higher education? Could you give more? Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, so from my perspective, this is it's almost like a lifelong learning. So the earlier you start, the better. Probably, in early childhood, but I'm not an expert in this. And I don't want to push the conversation towards that direction. But even from early childhood, these type of skills are sort of learned as you follow your parents. But again, this is not something I want to get into. So please, back to Aurea now.
Yep, I thought that, yeah. Yep, yes, okay, I understand, thank you. But Eva was asking for permission to speak, so I would like to give her the talk.
Can I?
Yeah, please, Eva,
Okay.
go ahead.
Yeah. So thank you. Yeah, I had just comment because I haven't finished my. Yeah, sorry, I just haven't finished my idea, and then it came. Yeah, I agree with this kind of lifelong learning, and I think at the very early stage of our career or starting at the small school, the level of the experience with the transferable skills is different. So if we talk about, let's say, project management, it can help very small project to organize very small event, and then let's say at higher skill at the professor level, it can be, let's say, how to manage the European project. So there is different level of these transferable skills which we need to be equipped during our life.
Thanks, Eva. Over to Fran. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I sort of agree with the last comment from Eva. We don't communicate the same way to our parents than the way we communicate in an executive meeting. So I agree that some basis needs to happen early in the childhood, and I won't get into the specifics of how hard and how difficult for some specific demographic groups it is to get access to a high quality soft skill development. I won't get into the differences between private schools, public schools, etc. So this is a whole different topic from today, but I want to make as well everyone mindful that not everyone has access to the same resources when they're a child. But moving forward to what we can do in the PhD program, soft skills. So that's where we need to continue putting the emphasis. It's like people in their careers, even late in their careers, continue developing communication skills, presentation skills, empathy skills, collaboration skills, negotiation skills. This is something that you need to continue doing on a lifelong learning. And then I want to add a comment on the publications. And I understand that this is the worry of professors, universities, researchers, and PhDs alike. I've been there and I've as well done my work publishing. But one of the things that I realized after the fact is that we need to differentiate who wins and who loses with the publication game. And here I think that we need to look at things from a very rational perspective. So there are some universities that are at the top of the game because of research. Just look at the Shanghai rankings and some of these rankings where you see universities being placed in the top 20, top 50 because of their research output. Is the key measurement, is the output. And we should be looking into what is measured as output. So is the volume of publications and is the reach of those publications. So it's a mixture of the two things. So here the rational question is, if you're not going to be, as a university, on the top 100 of those schools, how do you differentiate yourself? And I'm not saying that research or publishing is not important, but what I'm saying is that maybe you need to change where you publish and where is your reach, because there are many other options. And I'm bringing here maybe again the industry hat. In industry, we publish a lot, but we use different ways of publishing. Of course, we won't be publishing our IP. We might be publishing some trade secrets in the form of patents, and that's the way we publish. So some of us have a few, that's the way we publish. And there is another thing, and this is design patterns. in every single industry, you find new ways of doing things, you find patterns of doing research. So what you share is how somebody can try to get to some new results. And that's what you share. It's like, if you take that door, I'm not telling you where you're gonna get and how you're gonna get there, but I can tell you that these different doors open you different research avenues. And there's a lot of publication on this. Just find conferences on design patterns. On AI, NIPS is very very well participated by industry, and they don't reveal the algorithm behind Google, for example, but they show you what patterns led them to develop these new algorithms. So I think that we should be thinking about the whole spectrum of possibilities that we have here. And as everyone is saying, it's a mixture of choices. So from the researchers, so deciding when you do a PhD program is what are the goals of your department, what are the goals of your university, do they align with your goals? And the universities as well, they need to be thinking strategically, because if you're not the top 100, then what you can do is develop really good professionals and take care of really good people. So then your metrics might be different. And that's what I'm trying to advocate here. What governments can do to bring the other side of the house, I think Eva and Aurea mentioned that as well, is about data. Give transparency. Measure how happy researchers are in universities, how good their careers evolve over time. That's what most professional programs do, by the way, is measure employability after 3 months finishing the program, how happy they are. So these type of things, bring them forward, give transparency, and then it will become more a thing of rational choices.
Yeah, so time is slowly ticking. We will have to move on, but we just received a very interesting question on the chat. What I think I can address to Fran again. And the question is, it says, this is probably very country specific. There are some programs where culture of academia is changing. For example, there's a group of universities in Germany, so talk about Germany, that I have been told prioritize faculty who have been out of academia for at least several years, because they want people who can train their undergrad students in a way that is very career focused. Are there other places where this is happening? Could mechanisms for helping people transition from industry to academia be integrated into the development of regional innovation and ecosystems? So that's a very interesting question, because it turns turns the world around. Question is, if there is a way in from industry to academia. So maybe quickly, if you can react on that. And sorry, Eva, but after that we have to move on to our final question, because time is running.
Yeah, so I think it resonates with what I mentioned, is that there are some, of course, universities or schools that are rethinking what is the output that they want to take. And I'm glad to hear this example about Germany. In the US, there are many what they call professional doctoral programs. So you might have heard about Doctor of Education, Doctor of Business, Doctor of Engineering. So those type of programs are focused on with this type of approach. And again, their measurement is on career progression, salary progression, employability, and these type of things. And they tend to attract as well more professionals, more industry experts into the field, into the program. Of course, they need to be renowned in their field. So again, going back to the reach and number of publications, but they don't need to happen in the same standard way of academics. So yeah, there are alternatives. I think that probably Anglo-Saxon countries and these examples in Germany and some others in France, they're probably, at least I'm biased probably with the markets I know, but those are probably the ones that are best in class for this.
Okay, so thanks a lot, Fran. And with this, let's move to our final point, our final discussion round. We have 10 more minutes, if I'm not mistaken, and we arrived to the topic of networking. And honestly speaking, so networking was one of the points which was for me surprising And then after I was surprised, it came as, I don't know, an obvious thing. Like if you think of networks in the area of industry, but tell me if my numbers are incorrect. So almost 80–90% of the jobs are taken through your network. So if you're a good networker, it basically leads you into a good career or an fluent transitions among your career. But in the academics area, again, question of responsibility. Who is responsible for networking activities? Who should drive this, both from motivation, but also from financing? What do you think, Eva? Please come in first.
I think who is responsible, again, like both sides here, institution level, which should provide this kind of the platforms where is job fairs, where it's possible to create the network, for example, industry, but it's also supporting, let's say, I give you example, like we are Eurogate representing Eurycaris research at European level, so we are kind of community, but you have national community, and you have also at the institution, you can be part of some small network about to improve something, and then you have kind of friends from different disciplines, and you can create something. So institutions should provide this opportunity also to support, let's say, the activities within small communities, and at the same time the responsibility is also on the researcher, that they need to be proactive and trying to increase this networking or community engagement, and maybe institution can provide the tools or give them more opportunity, or also LinkedIn can help to build the contact to the people, because it's really important. And it's also my case for the, not directly for the network, but through the network and the activities, I also find my current work. So this is extremely important.
To this point, I want to cite someone from the audience, I believe, with a relevant question, and maybe Aurea, you can pick it up. So I think Valeria says or asks, would it be advisable to include a company, the longer PhD, what we were discussing before, with a compulsory internship within a company, funded by the company during the PhD? What do you think about this sort of push from the institution towards, because this is also a form of networking?
It is already happening in my institution, and also through a European project. I talked about it earlier, PhD Hub. It's basically to create regional innovation ecosystem. So you have the institution at the heart, and they are developing a collaboration with different companies, or also municipality, region, and they are sending their doctoral candidates to resolve a problem that the company is getting, or to solve a solution for the municipality. For example, there was this project, it was for 6 months, and the municipality needed to develop new technologies for urban security. And they asked the institution to send 3 doctoral candidates, expert in this field. So I think it's a good practice, and yeah, it's a very good way to develop transferable skills and to reinforce the link between the private sector.
Thank you. And now I'm turning to Fran. Fran, please. You have around 2 minutes max, because then we will have to start wrapping up the session.
Yeah, so there are different angles to networking. So the more traditional one is thinking about showing up when we talk about, let's say, we probably try to guide everyone into showing off rather than showing up, so that your contribution, your reputation helps somebody. So if you're a researcher why not? Maybe you're solving something that could help an industry, an individual, etc. Reach out. When you're in a conference, try to deliver the best you can, and then people will notice. So I think it's in addition to what everyone is talking about professional memberships, about conferences, about mobility, industry, academia, etc. At the end of the day, is about delivering and showing off some of the results and the impact that you can drive. I think that's what creates credibility and reputation, and that's what creates opportunities, at least in more challenging times. When they are less challenging and they just need to recruit people, then yeah, probably personal relationships help. But I think that in the times we are living today is about contribution, about reputation, about your branding, understood as what you are able to deliver.
Yeah, thank you, Fran. And with this, unfortunately, we have 3 more minutes. So let me quickly go to the final round. So basically, the final round is basically wrapping up this discussion. And first of all, saying thank you for the audience. We received quite a number of questions. I didn't manage to incorporate all of them into this discussion, but we will definitely reflect on that a bit later. And one thing what I would like to motivate the audience, if you watch the live stream or you're going to watch this later, if you have any thoughts, any recommendations, even questions, please contact me through my email or Twitter account, or even you can call me in my office if you want, to continue this discussion. And also your words are going to be considered when we going to develop the next version of our declaration together with Eurodoc. And in order to wrap up this session, we have 2 more minutes. I would like to have my final question from our panelists. And the question is very simple. What would be your single takeaway message, the single, maybe a recommendation, a policy recommendation, what you would suggest to our audience, very quickly in 30 seconds each. Let's start with Eva.
Okay, I will start. I think I will focus on the I think what is most important from point of view of doctoral candidate or Irikaris researcher, I would say the transferable skills training that should be provided to us. So what could be done at the policy level? I think especially the quality assurance who are dealing with the content of doctoral programs or who would like to open new doctoral programs should be assured that these things are in place, available to Irikaris researcher to improve their career progress and let's say this networking opportunity, transferable skills training. So some kind of quality assurance process should be in place from, again, maybe from national level or.
Thank you. Aurea, what is your takeaway message?
Okay, so I would say from the institution point of view, I would really encourage all the institutes to improve their doctoral education, doctoral training, because the world is changing fast, and doctoral candidates really need to be prepared for the world also outside of academia and to answer to the global challenges. And I would also encourage the institute to develop that network through industry, NGOs, government. It is really important to create innovation.
Thank you very much. And Fran, very quickly, 20 seconds.
Include career placement metrics into any funding consideration. So what is the average salary of people who have finished PhD in those universities, employability levels? So include all these bag of metrics into a career placement KPI, and all the funding. There needs to be a threshold, and this is an important driver for funding. So put the candidates, put the PhDs at the center, basically.
And with this, I would like to thank you one more time for your attention. It was a pleasure to have you here, and enjoy ESOF. Thank you very much. Goodbye.